The Quick Haul Long D9 is Tern's newest full-size cargo e-bike with a 250-watt Bosch Cargo line mid-drive motor. This bike felt and behaved a lot like an analog bike because of that motor, but when I first hopped on it, I wasn't sure if it was gonna have enough power to carry a heavy load of cargo. That's just one of the many things we tested though, so if you wanna know if the Quick Haul lives up to its name, let's take a ride and find out. Welcome to Electric Bike Report, I'm John, and I'm gonna walk you through all the details of the Quick Haul Long, but first I've got a couple items of business to cover. First, if you haven't seen any of our reviews before, thanks for checking this one out. We do standardized performance tests and extremely detailed reviews of every bike we get our hands on, with the goal of helping you find the best bike for your needs and budget. If that sounds good to you, please help us out by making sure you're subscribed to the channel, and if we're able to steer you toward a bike you want to purchase, please also use our affiliate links down in the video description as a way to say thank you. We do earn commissions, but don't worry, you won't get charged anything extra. We really appreciate the support though, as our reviews do take lots of time and effort. With that out of the way, let's talk about some of the Quick Haul's highlights. Do be aware that there are 3 versions of the bike, but we're gonna be talking strictly about the Long D9 model that we have here. The D8 and the P9 are both short tail options that have some things in common, but they're also very different bikes. So the first thing to come back to is really that Bosch Cargo line mid-drive. Most of the other cargo bikes we've tested had rear hub motors that felt kind of overpowered, especially without cargo, because they needed to feel normal when loaded up, and the Quick Haul takes a completely different approach. Loaded up or not, the bike feels just like a regular bike, just a bit faster and easier, and with a torque sensor, it's able to detect your level of effort to give you a bit more oomph when you're working harder. As a result, you can use this like a non-cargo bike effectively, but it functions just as well when loaded down. Another big thing to consider is the Quick Haul Long's weight. Where most cargo bikes we've tested were in the 75 to 95 pound range, or between 34 and 43 kilograms, this one weighs just 65 pounds or 29.5 kilograms, so it feels a lot lighter and more agile, but that's also thanks to its rigid fork and its tires. Those are the Schwalbe pickup model, sized at 20 inches by 2.35 inches or 60 millimeters by 406. They're puncture resistant and specifically made to handle the extra weight of a loaded down cargo bike. Basically, the Quick Haul feels a bit more like a city bike or a commuter than a typical cargo bike, so its handling is a little bit more crisp and quick. Finally, the range on the Quick Haul is awesome, and mostly that comes down to the efficiency of a mid-drive motor with a torque sensor. We'll talk about the specifics later on, but we had one of the best range tests from a cargo bike ever, and I personally put over 150 miles or 240 kilometers on this bike with just a couple of charges. But moving on, let's run through the bike spec sheet and then we'll dive into our test data. I mentioned the motor already, but that's paired with the Bosch PowerPack 500, which is a removable 36 volt, 500 watt hour battery placed at an angle behind the seat tube. The Quick Haul features a Tektro group set that includes an HD T280 hydraulic disc brake system paired with 180mm rotors, as well as a 9-speed drivetrain with a 48-tooth chainring and an 11 to 42-tooth cassette. It also has a Velo Comfort saddle, front and rear fenders with splash guards, a tail light with brake light functionality, and a headlight that meets the German ST VZO standard, so it won't blind other motorists or cyclists on the road. Up in the cockpit, this bike has a telescoping stem with 700mm low-rise ergonomic handlebars and lock-on ergonomic rubber grips. The bike's black and white display and control panel sits on the left handlebar, while its trigger style shifter is on the right along with a bell. There's a center-mounted kickstand to help with stability when loading up. The bike has a total payload capacity of 354 pounds, including the rider, or 160 kilograms, and a weight capacity of 198 pounds, or 90 kilograms on its rear cargo rack. It weighs about 65 pounds, including its battery, and both the bike and its battery are UL certified. That covers all the basics though, so let's dive into our test results and see how the bike performed. First, let's talk about our brake test, where our tester Griffin measured the distance the quick haul took to stop after first pedaling up to 20 miles per hour. He repeated the process 3 times, we averaged the results to smooth out any inconsistencies, and the bike's final result was 17 feet 6 inches, which is about 2 feet better than the current average for all the cargo bikes we've tested, which is right now 19 feet 7 inches. So the main contributing factor seemed to be the quick haul's relatively low weight. Most of the cargo bikes we tested were upwards of 75 pounds and sometimes even up to around 90 or 95. At 65 pounds, the quick haul's brakes don't have as much momentum to counteract, so they're able to stop the bike faster. One of the things that really stood out to me when I tested the bike was how stable and straight it stayed while braking. Even with some extra weight on the back, I added a sandbag and a cargo basket that was about 60 pounds. It really didn't deviate from its line of travel, and the brake system had no issues with the extra weight. Bottom line, the quick haul did a fantastic job, and it's clearly spec'd well for what it does. Next up, we'll talk about our speed test. I went out to the bike path so I could find the quick haul's average speed in each of its 4 pedal assist settings when I was riding with a moderate level of effort. And I took a GoPro with me to film this one, so let's check out that clip and see how it did. All right, so we are here for a speed test, starting off without pedal assist, and gotta say the quick haul pedals pretty well with no motor power, going about 11 miles per hour here. Kind of fluctuating around that range, but maybe up toward 11.5. Let's go ahead and go up to eco mode. All right, so that motor kicked on. You can hear that slight whine. Came on very smooth, pretty subtle amount of power, but by the bike's display, you know, we're getting about a mile per hour of difference. So up toward maybe 12.5 or so. Let's go up to tour mode. All right, so there's a very smooth sort of ramping up in power. It's almost not noticeable, but there again, we are getting a difference in speed. So kind of around 14.5, 15 maybe. Yeah, all right, let's go up to sport mode. All right, so there definitely is a more noticeable power here. Again, a smooth ramping up, but I can tell that I'm getting a bit further and faster with every pedal stroke. So kind of up around 17 and a half, maybe 18 miles per hour. Yep, all right. And then we'll finish things off in turbo mode. And I'm up in the highest gear here, so still feels really natural, very smooth. Motor's pretty quiet. So let's see, we're up around 19 miles per hour, maybe a little above. Now, if I do give it some extra gas, you know, we can get up toward maybe 19.5, 20, but yeah, sort of with that more moderate level of effort, seems to kind of want to hang around 19 or just a little above. But all right, we'll call it there and bounce back to the studio. All right, so a couple of quick caveats here. First, this bike has a mid-drive motor with a torque sensor, so your numbers might be a little different from mine since the bike responds to the rider's level of effort. Second, on a related note, I mentioned that I kept a moderate level of effort for the test. If I'd pedaled softer or heavier, those numbers would likely have changed. And then third, I did this test without any cargo on the rack, but I wouldn't expect the numbers to change a whole lot if it had been loaded up. So with no pedal assist, I started things off right around 11 miles per hour and then went up to 12.8 in eco mode. I hit 14.8 in tour mode, 17.7 in sport mode, and then finished things off at 19.2 miles per hour in turbo mode. Plugging that data into a graph allows us to see the bike's speed and power distribution. Now, our ideal distribution for this test is a straight angled line that shows consistent increases in speed, and for the most part, that's exactly what we see here. This kind of distribution means that each pedal assist setting gives you an extra dose of power that feels just right, and it also makes every assist level feel distinct. The big thing that stood out to me here was just how natural the quick haul felt when pedaling, and by that I mean that it almost felt like I was riding a regular analog bike, just going faster. That's the real beauty of high-end mid-drives like the Bosch Cargo line. They really have the pedal assist dialed in, so it feels really smooth, almost like it's not even there. Ultimately, this is about as good as it gets for this test, so we've got to give kudos to Tern and Bosch for the quick haul's great performance. Now let's talk about our range test, which lets us figure out how far a bike can go on a single charge. I personally did both portions of this test out on the bike paths. So first I rode the quick haul in turbo mode until the battery died, and then we recharged it, and I did the same thing in eco mode. This gave us a minimum and a maximum range, which turned out to be 37 and 100.2 miles, both of which are significantly above Tern's advertised range of 26 to 53 miles. We can use our data to compare the quick haul to other cargo bikes we've tested, but we haven't seen a ton of bikes in that category with mid-drives, so I'll break things down in a couple of different ways. If I compare our results to only those few bikes with mid-drives, the quick haul is right about average, but if we look at the whole cargo category, things change a little. Its high power test results are still right around the average, maybe a little above, but its low power test was over 30 miles above average. The big difference there largely comes down to the fact that this bike has a mid-drive, which is naturally more efficient than a hub motor since it relies on rider effort, but also the bike's lowest assist setting puts out a pretty minimal amount of power that just kind of takes the edge off of pedaling, so that helps it stretch out its battery charge for a pretty crazy number of miles. Do keep in mind that we did this test with no weight on the cargo rack, so your results might end up closer to Tern's estimated range if you're carrying kids or groceries. Either way, we're happy with the bike's results, and it should give you plenty of miles for running errands or dropping the kids off at school. I found myself riding mostly in tour and sport modes when I had extra weight on the back, and staying in those middle settings will help you stretch out the battery charge so you can get the most range from the bike. For our last test, we tested the Quick Haul Long's climbing ability in our hill test. Our tester for this one was Justin, and he pedaled up a paved path called Hellhole Trail using the bike's highest level of pedal assist. This path is 1/3 of a mile long, and it has an average grade of 12%, so it's not something you'd want to tackle without a motor. I'll pass you over to Justin for this one so he can share his thoughts as he pedals.
We are out at Hellhole doing the pedal test on the Tern Long Haul D9, and I'm very excited to kind of see how this does. It's got the Bosch Cargo line motor. I'm not loaded up with cargo, so we're probably not gonna, push this like really to what it can do. It's pretty intense. So right now, about 10 miles an hour, 9.9, kind of classic like what I see with Bosch. And a lot of the mid-drives, if I keep a good cadence, I'm not having to push that hard. So I could go faster if I wanted to, but again, I'm trying to be consistent and just again test the motor. So I'll let you listen to it through this next section. So yeah, I'd say the motor's fairly quiet, a little bit less so than what I was expecting. I'll ride about 10 miles an hour through there. But I've noticed as I go through these hills, if I shift, down to just one slightly easier gear, I really just kind of keep that cadence and I don't have to push super hard. If I want to push hard, I can. Very natural feeling, very solid. So overall, I'm very curious to see kind of how this does on the test. Let's go to the tape.
So clearly the Quick Haul had no trouble getting to the top. Justin finished the test in 1 minute and 32 seconds with an average speed of 11.8 miles per hour. Again, I'll break things down a couple of different ways for comparison. So the Tern's results were 17 seconds slower than average when compared to all the cargo bikes we've tested, but most of those had hub motors that are often faster than mid-drives. Compared to all the other bikes we've tested with 250 watt mid-drive motors, the Quick Haul came in 5 seconds faster, so it's clearly outfitted well based on its specs. Looking at those other bikes with mid-drives, there are a bunch of areas where they differed, so there's likely no single reason why the Quick Haul was a bit faster. Some were heavier than the Tern, others had lower torque ratings, many had different riding positions that can affect aerodynamics, and there were all shapes and sizes of tires which affect traction, but regardless, this bike proved to be plenty capable. I tested the Quick Haul both with and without cargo at our secondary location called Pilot Hill, which is slightly less difficult than Hell Hole. Without weight, I made it in 1 minute and 27 seconds at 13.8 miles per hour, but then with that sandbag and basket that added roughly 60 pounds, I climbed 20 seconds and 2.6 miles per hour slower, but the bike handled it just fine, and I really didn't notice much difference in feel when pedaling. As Justin mentioned, you can sort of choose your difficulty level by what assist level and gear that you're in, so I found myself bumping down a couple gears when carrying cargo, so the Bosch motor would kick out more power. Before we wrap things up, there's one last thing to discuss, and that's ride quality. A lot of how any bike feels to ride comes down to personal preferences, but let's take the Quick Haul back out to the bike paths one more time and talk about some of the basics. All right, let's discuss ride quality on the Quick Haul. This is, of course, a cargo bike, but it's a little bit on the lighter weight side, so something more along the lines of a lightweight commuter or a city bike, just with that long cargo rack on the back. And the riding position on this bike is adjustable, but it kind of ranges from you know, slightly forward leaning to maybe more of like a moderate forward lean, depending on where you have things set. There is a single frame size that's made for riders from 5'1" up to 6'1", and the adjustability that it has, it's quite a lot of flexibility, honestly. You get about 9.5 inches in your saddle height with the seat post, and then about 4.5 inches of adjustment with your handlebar height, thanks to the telescoping stem. And then let's see, we don't have a suspension on this bike. It's a rigid fork up front, but that helps keep the handling pretty crisp and stable, especially when you're loaded up with cargo. You do get a little bit of cushion from the tires. Those are 20" by 2.35. They're made by Schwalbe, and the pickup model is actually cargo specific. It's made to be a bit more durable and grippy. And then the motor that we have, you can hear that right now, that is a Bosch mid-drive. It's their cargo line with 85 Newton meters of torque and a torque sensor. So at all levels of pedal assist, it feels really smooth and really natural, kind of like you're riding an analog bike. But then of course, you know, it still has that sort of low-end power to handle cargo. But in any case, that should wrap it up. Let's bounce back to the studio. To go back to the Quick Haul's sizing and riding position, I'm 5'11", so I'm fairly close to the top end of the rider height range, and I found it to be really comfortable. A lot of that comes down to the adjustability I mentioned, so I found a great riding position with the telescoping stem raised pretty high, but if you like a more aggressive lean, you could set that lower. The bike's geometry kind of places the bottom bracket more forward than I'm used to with most other cargo bikes, so it felt like I was pedaling more out instead of down. That took a little time to adjust to, but it felt like second nature after a couple of hours on the bike. I think the Quick Haul's natural feel is another huge element of its ride quality, and as we've discussed, it's something that really separates the Quick Haul from most other cargo bikes that use hub motors. Many of those feel best when they're loaded down with weight, but this one felt like a regular bike at all times, so I think that ultimately makes it more versatile. You don't have to use it just as a cargo bike. But speaking of cargo, Tern sent us a few accessories to try out that we have on the bike here, including a set of pannier bags, a storage compartment called a cash box that fits in the frame under the battery, and a set of folding footboards called stow decks. The brand has a huge range of accessories to help accommodate kids and cargo, and even some we haven't seen before, like a tow kit that allows you to connect the fork of another bike to the tail end of this one, but it is worth pointing out that none of them are included with the Quick Haul. Most of the other cargo bikes we've tested included some starter accessories right out of the box, so do plan on spending extra in this case. And then finally, we were pretty happy with the accessories we got once they were in place, but getting things set up wasn't the easiest process. Depending on what you're looking to do with the bike, you might want to avoid switching between different accessories that go in the same locations, or at least be prepared to spend some time doing it. That said, I really like the bike's overall feel. Its ergonomic handlebars and grips were comfortable. I found the saddle a little on the firm side, along the lines of what I'd expect on a city bike, which is appropriate. I mentioned earlier that this bike is designed for urban environments, and I'd say its nimble handling plays into that, but you saw the bike standing up in the intro, and that is another factor. Tern says the Quick Haul only takes up the floor space of a potted plant when it's standing up, which I think is accurate if you're talking about a fairly big one, but either way, it's way less than most full-size cargo bikes, so if you don't have a ton of extra space, this might be a good option. As I said in the intro, I really wasn't sure what to expect once I got the Quick Haul Long loaded up with cargo, but after I found out how its motor responded, I went from a little skeptical to really impressed. With so many of the other cargo bikes we've tested being overpowered without cargo, I think that this bike's biggest strength is that it feels and behaves like a regular bike at all times, while still being extremely capable of hauling the added weight from kids or cargo. Looking back over our test data, the Quick Haul did great. It had average or above average performance in each test. It felt pretty nimble for its size, and it was generally comfortable to ride. The only real downsides we identified were really more just things to keep in mind. So first, you'll need to buy cargo or passenger accessories separately, and second, that some of those accessories aren't the easiest to install, but once they're set, you should be good to go. I've got to say, I could see this being really functional as sort of a do-anything bike once it's outfitted with accessories. You could load up the kids for a ride to the park, or stack up quite a few packages when running deliveries, but you could just as easily take it out in a low-power mode and get some exercise on a solo ride. So if you're looking for a family bike to keep in the garage, a workhorse to get a specific job done, or just a really functional bike that won't take up a lot of storage space, the Tern Quick Haul might be a good fit for you. If you're interested in learning more about the Quick Haul Long D9, we'll leave 2 links down in the video description, one to our written review and another to Tern's website. Let us know which of Tern's accessories you'd outfit your Quick Haul with down in the comments section, and feel free to send us any questions if there's anything we didn't cover. But thanks for taking a ride with me today. We hope you found this review helpful. Again, I'm John with Electric Bike Report, and this is the Tern Quick Haul Long D9.